Welcome back to Take Action News, everybody. 26-year-old Aaron Swartz committed suicide this past week. He was widely regarded as a digital prodigy. He helped develop the social news site Reddit and RSS, which is the technology that allows websites to send updates to subscribers. He did this when he was 15 years old. When he left Reddit, he engaged in internet digital activism. He co-founded Demand Progress, which is a political action group that campaigns against internet censorship. He also, though, along the way, pushed legal limits that allegedly put him on the wrong side of the law. In 2011, he was arrested in Boston and accused of computer fraud and illegally obtaining documents from protected computers. He was later indicted in an incident in which he allegedly stole millions of online documents from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. He pled guilty in that case. Joining us, Dr. Alan Rosenblatt. Alan, I wonder if you can, we're making Aaron Swartz our sort of activist in memoriam. I wonder if you can explain or put into words or put in some context for people who weren't following this, why he was such a crucial figure and such a meaningful figure to so many people.
Wow. I didn't know him well, but I did meet him a few times. We've traveled in very similar circles. My favorite description of what was going on was by Mika Sifry over at Tech President, and he published within his remembrance article a long passage from an email that Aaron had sent to Mika regarding Mika's work with the Sunlight Foundation. And the Sunlight Foundation, of course, is focused on transparency and open government. And Aaron really challenged Mika to think bigger, to not just think in terms of exposing individuals who are corrupt in the political system for the flow of money in exchange for votes, because, as he put it in his comments, they would simply be replaced by somebody else doing exactly the same thing, because the system causes the problem. The fact that there is a 2-year electoral cycle and that you have to raise a lot of money in order to win those elections forces any member of Congress to skirt the edge or cross the line on these kinds of pay-for-play kind of activities. And I think that's really the testament to what Aaron was all about, is just this bigger, think bigger kind of approach. Don't focus in and narrow in on the minutia of the policy, pass this, to tweak that, but think about the big picture and the causal roots, and really go to the heart of the matter and advocate for change that changes comprehensively and eliminates the need to focus on these little campaigns.
We're talking with Alan Rosenblatt. Also want to bring in Richard Esco, who's a policy wonk with a lot of corporate experience. In just a minute, we're going to bring in Richard Esco to talk a little bit about the prosecution. But Alan, by all accounts, he was facing a pretty hefty sentence if he was convicted by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston. Could you figure out, the case, why it was that the U.S. Attorney's Office went after him so hard when, for example, the university involved initially said that there shouldn't be charges?
Well, so he basically went in and used a guest account to access JSTOR, which is an online database and search engine for academic scholarly research articles. And he went on to the MIT campus, logged in as a guest, had access because he was there, and set up a server apparently in a closet to download 24 hours or a couple days worth of just constant download of content that he was then able to republish elsewhere. My understanding is that JSTOR had no concern and did not want to pursue any kinds of or drop the charges, and it was MIT and the Justice Department that pushed harder and harder, and he was facing not only 35 years in prison but $1 million plus kind of legal fees, and it was just too much for him to handle. And his parents have come out quite explicitly saying that it was the pressure of this litigation that was that drove him to suicide.
Well, there's always, unfortunately, there's usually never one cause. That there's a whole series of factors that combined together can make somebody suicidal. But certainly the approach of the U.S. Attorney's Office in Boston is certainly, puzzling and frustrating to so many people. Richard Esco joins us now. Richard, what do you make of what the U.S. Attorney was after, and why would they go after Aaron Swartz in the way that they did?
Oh, can't hear him.
Richard, we're going to ask you to unmute yourself. And again, folks, just to sort of again set the scene. I mean, Aaron Swartz said obviously Alan Rosenblatt. He was he's a prodigy. He had done a lot of things. There was some, I suppose, some argument that if you are even though these are academic documents and academic journals that by their nature are shared in the academic world, that by downloading them the way he did and by going through sort of his own method, that was in a sense illegal, and that there should be some prosecution, or there should be some penalty for what he did. I guess the key question is the way that the prosecutors went after him with the potential of, and they added several indictments, and they kept adding charges. He was facing years and years of charges, right?
Well, not only was it overarching, just too much and just too insane of a punishment for what he did. One of the other ironies, and here's a correct use of the word irony, I hope, is that very few people ever read these academic journal articles because access to them is extremely limited. The journals cost a lot of money. They're very niche audiences, and the idea that you can figure out ways to have more people read the high-quality academic research that's out there is somehow something we should discourage. It's an irony of the highest order, I think.
Yeah, we're hearing a little bit of an echo just because of the Google Hangout, but let's go ahead and bring in Richard Eskow. Richard, I assume that. Well, no, it's not good. Well, let's give it a try. Richard? No, he's not there. Okay. Well, Alan, we'll just keep the conversation going with you. I mean,
sure.
I think that seems to be the big picture in all of this, is that, sure, I mean, this was a guy who was a prodigy. He was he had unbelievable talents in ways that I suppose society wasn't quite ready to appreciate and understand.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And I think that the idea of what he was doing with the JSTOR database goes back to that think bigger kind of attitude that he had, which was this is really valuable content that's being pigeonholed and bottled up so that very few people ever read it, and yet it's of great value to the future of humanity and the future of the planet. Therefore, it should be free. If you go back to William Gibson's original book, Neuromancer, where the notion of cyberspace was coined, the basic element or principle of that book was that information wants to be free. And there is this nature, the challenge of online publishing in general is that once you push something out onto a website, being able to keep it behind a subscription wall to prevent people from seeing it is virtually impossible, because there's just so many ways for people to just share it. And it just goes out there, and it wants to be free, because that is the nature of how information works. William Perry Barlow, one of the co-founders of the Electronic Frontier Foundation and a lyricist for the Grateful Dead, interestingly as well, wrote a piece back in the 1990s called Selling Wine Without the Bottles, and comparing the difference between intellectual property and physical property, and that when you steal physical property, if I steal your car, you don't have your car anymore, I do. But if I steal your ideas, you still have your ideas, it's just I've stolen them and shared them with other people. And that is a fundamental difference. And in a way, what you start seeing here is that it's certainly not all aspects of intellectual property deserve the kind of rigorous enforcement that you see with physical property and with certain kinds of intellectual property. And I think with Aaron, what we saw was his idea of driving into the kinds of intellectual property that was out there, like the JSTOR database, that really serves mankind better if it's public than if it's protected.
So interesting. Alan, we appreciate you joining us as always. Great segments, and thank you for talking about Aaron Swartz. And it's, I guess, important for all of us to remember that in addition to all of his, all the stuff that he did online and his efforts to try to make information more accessible, he was also, of course, he was a brother, he was a son, he was a grandson.
He was a boyfriend.
And by all accounts, just an amazing, amazing human being. And so we mourn his passing, not just because of all of his many accomplishments, but also just because of how beloved he was by his family and friends. And suicide, as many of us know, is just such a pernicious and awful thing in our society. And yet another amazingly talented, incredible kid. He's 26 years old, but chose to take his own life. And that's so sad for all of us, and so sad for everybody involved.